so this door is never locked. So then we kept walking, and I seen something laying there.
She's saying that she just talked to Betsy a couple of days ago, so I don't see how.
Whenever I spoke to the head of the state for Betsy and Gene, the only information the family that they had was Yoshi, which would be Betsy's mom.
We're here for whatever you need, isn't it? There she is. There's the dog.
Newly revealed body camera footage showing the death investigation of actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy. But with so much of that video being blocked from release, many questions are swirling this morning. And an accuser is speaking out against the Alexander brothers. She's saying that one of the real estate moguls lured her into an expensive mansion and raped her. More of her story is straight ahead. Plus, we're getting you ready for the battered and burned murder trial. Linda Stermer's husband wanted a divorce, and prosecutors say that she met his request with a blunt object, fire, and the full weight of a van. Plus, coming up this hour, we're looking ahead to the Menendez brothers' next hearing in their ongoing bid for freedom. We've got two experts from California joining us live. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Tuesday morning to you, and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. We got a great show planned for you, so let's get started. Grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. Pans on fire, Sherri Papini is fighting for child custody. That's right, the now divorced mother of two is fighting her ex-husband Keith for joint custody of their two kids. Who can blame him for opposing her on this? This is the California woman who bailed on her family, faking her own kidnapping, deliberately injuring herself, making her family worried, sick, and pretending to be the victim until she was found out by authorities to have lied, schemed, and planned it all in order to hook up with her ex-boyfriend. What a disgusting, dastardly thing to do to the people who love you the most. If I'm that custody judge, I would seriously question whether there's any good that can come from her children spending half of their time with her. Sherri Papini abandoned her kids once without any regard for how the trauma of believing that they had lost their mother would affect them for the rest of their lives. Is it going to be triggering for them to be around her? This judge has a very weighty decision to make. Children feel the wounds of trauma for their lifetime if they don't heal. And undoubtedly, those children need serious professional counseling in order to recover from their trauma and the lasting effects of it. And so does their mother. In my opinion, Sherri Papini needs to heal herself first before she adversely affects any other human beings more than she already has. I can't help but wonder if she realizes the extent of the emotional and the mental damage she did to the people who love her the most. I am sure she misses her kids, but maybe in this custody battle, just maybe, she's doing what's best for her and not for her kids, like she did when she faked her own kidnapping. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
What'd she say?
She deserved to die. She was
I have no more questions for Brenda.
In North Dakota, we've got the defense case continuing in the toxic roommate murder trial for Nicole Rice. Big question, will Rice testify? Court's going to start up at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. We will go there live together when it does. In Dedham, Massachusetts, we've got defendant Karen Reed back in court. She's got another motions hearing ahead of her retrial. Court today in her case is set to start at 11 a.m. And in Nevada, we've got a preliminary hearing scheduled for Victoria Goodwin. She's the wife of Ghost Adventure star Oren Goodwin. She was arrested earlier this month for an alleged murder for hire plot to kill her husband. we will be following that case for you as well. Now, let's go to our top story. We're getting a brand new look into the death investigation of actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy. Police released redacted body camera footage from outside of the couple's home. Now, this is where the couple, you recall, were found dead back in February. And this new footage shows workers who called police to report seeing somebody lying on the floor inside. Let's watch.
So you got here and saw that the door was open, right? And saw her. You guys both did.
Yeah, he walked down on that side, checked the door on that side. It was locked, and he said, this door is never locked. So then we kept walking, and I seen something laying there. I thought it was animals that she has.
Yeah.
Until I see him, I could see him, like, just buckle up, turn around, and then that's when I see him.
Did they find gas or anything in there?
There was no initial detection, but we have windows open, and it's actually New Mexico gas coming out.
Oh, okay.
Because who they are, I don't have one on me. I just want to keep this limited as much as possible, because once this gets out, you know how this is going to turn with the, you know.
A week later, medical examiner said that Hackman died of heart disease and his wife Betsy died from hantavirus. A New Mexico court last week granted a temporary restraining order against the release of any photos or videos that show Hackman inside Hackman and his wife inside of their home, rather. So let's talk about this. What do you think after seeing some of that body camera footage? And we've got a little more to play for you. I want to bring in our guests. What a great panel we have this morning. I've got former prosecutors Melba Pearson, Randolph Rice, and Josh Ritter all on the program. Thank you all for being with us this morning. And Josh, especially you waking up so early on the West Coast for us. Josh, would you kick off our conversation, please? Watching the video, tell me what jumped out at you?
You know, it's funny. The first thing that struck my mind is we've been so confused as to what that neighborhood was like that no one would notice the comings and goings or the lack thereof of Hackman and his wife, right? Because so much of this has been about why didn't anyone check on them? Why didn't anyone notice? Why didn't they notice that the dogs were coming and going and no one was caring for them? But you're getting a little glimpse, at least, of just kind of how rural an area that was. And that's what struck me immediately, is this might make a little more sense. It sounds like it was a very secluded area that they lived. The surrounding that we're able to see, at least in that small bit of video that we were looking at, looks like it's not like there's neighbors living on top of them. Maybe the idea that they would go unnoticed, maybe the idea that the dogs would go unnoticed makes a little bit more sense now.
Sure. Appreciate it, Josh. You know, speaking of the dog, let's look at a clip where they talk about luring the dog.
Take off again?
Yeah, close. She's hungry.
Oh, trying to offer the little dog some food there. Yeah, so sad. You know, we know multiple dogs on the property, 2 alive, 1 deceased in the house that died from starvation and dehydration because that dog was in an enclosed area. Melba, to you next, please. What were the things that jumped out at you watching this fresh video footage?
Well, good morning, everyone. And it's just an awful, awful tragedy. I just can't get my mind around, and this, I don't know, this makes me very just sad to think about this, that Gene Hackman was alone for a whole week with no one to care for him, and not understanding because he has Alzheimer's that his wife was dead. And just, you know, I think they probably made a collective decision to, you know, they're going to care for each other because they're very, very intense about their privacy. And they didn't think that this possibly could happen. And you also see that in their wills as well, because, you know, both of them basically left their estate to the other spouse, and now both of them are gone. So you think about the trust battle that's going to happen, you know, basically the battle over the estate. And, you know, it's just so awful and tragic that this is the way, you know, both of them had to end their lives.
Right. You're right, Melba. I have another clip here. Let's take a listen to the 911 call.
Are they breathing?
I have no idea. I'm not inside the house. It's closed. It's locked. I can't go in. But I see that she's laying down on a floor from the window.
They appear to be completely awake.
On the way?
Do they appear to be awake or alert?
No, it's not.
Okay. Are they moving at all?
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody out here really quick.
Randolph Rice, to you next, please. What jumped out at you watching all the videos?
Well, if this would have been a different scenario, we know now that they died from natural causes, but, oftentimes when we see body cam, it's the beginning of an investigation of a criminal matter. And unfortunately, that was not the case here, but, looking at these body cams, it just shows you how valuable they could be if this was an investigation. Obviously, the officers showing up on the scene, talking to the caretakers, that's the beginning of that investigation. So fortunately, that wasn't the case here. Unfortunately, it was a death that was natural, but, just shows you how technology has come so far that we now have all this information that we used to not have 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah, isn't that the truth? I think so many people were just so upset with the news, right? The news of this, and I think, of course, headlines are swirling. He was such a beloved, accomplished actor, and nobody wanted to see him found dead this way, and his wife found dead with him. It's so stunning. And I think at the outset, everybody was thinking, was this something criminal? My gosh, he was elderly, she was not. But anything criminal has been completely ruled out. This is just plain sad. But the conversation isn't stopping, is it? Josh Ritter, you live in California where Gene Hackman worked for many, many years. I would imagine places you go and things you do, people bring this up to you knowing that you're an attorney and you have your show Courtroom Confidential. What are some of the things people say to you, Josh, when you get asked about this case?
You're absolutely right. He was beloved, and I think that is why it immediately caught everyone's interest. And then the circumstances, we all jumped to that idea, I know that I did, that this must have been carbon monoxide poisoning, because initially we thought, how do two people just seemingly drop dead at the same time without any other explanation? As the investigation unfolded, we realized that no, in fact, she had died sometime before him. And now we realize that he tragically was living in that home for several days while she was dead. And that, I think, is the heartbreaking thing that I hear most people talking about. It's just trying to understand what the final moments of his life were like. And like you said, it was incredibly sad. It was incredibly lonely. We know that he was suffering from advanced Alzheimer's, and we wonder how much did he even understand what was going on, but certainly not enough to even call for help. I mean, there was no 911 call made in that time that he was alone in the house. So it's at least the people that I'm speaking to, many people are wondering just why wasn't anyone checking in? Why wasn't he able to call for help if there was some time where he was alone there in the home?
Exactly, Josh. It's just so sad. I'm sure everybody has regret, right? We always think about what we wish we could have done or said, especially when someone we love leaves us. And certainly, I'm sure the family members and dear friends have regrets not speaking to them more. We wish them all well as they continue trying to find some comfort at this time of sadness. We're going to continue the conversation with all of you. I'm so glad you're here. Melba Pearson, Randolph Rice, Josh Ritter, stand by, please. Coming up next for you here on Opening Statements, here's what we've got.
As alleged, the defendants used their wealth and positions to create and facilitate opportunities to sexually assault women. In particular, Oren and Tal Alexander allegedly used their prominent positions in the real estate industry to induce women to come to events and parties.
A woman accusing one of the Alexander brothers of sex assault is speaking out. And what comes next for the Menendez brothers? We're looking ahead to their possible path to freedom.
Lori Daybell,
already convicted for the murders of her children.
Doomsday cult mom is now lawyer Lori.
She's representing herself
on charges of conspiring to murder her fourth husband.
She said, I can murder you now.
She really thinks she's equipped to try this case.
She appears very sure of herself.
I have real trial experience.
It's going to be a strange trial. We'll see how it plays out.
The Cult Mom Conspiracy Trial, next week following jury selection, only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Now for what's trending in true crime. A Miami nurse is speaking out for the first time, claiming that she was raped by one of the Alexander brothers, who are charged, you may recall, in a sweeping sex trafficking case. According to ABC News, Maria Suska told Miami Beach police that she was raped by Oren Alexander in 2014 at a private party at the Versace mansion. These are some photos taken from her Facebook page, and you'll recall Oren and two of his brothers are facing federal charges of conspiracy and forced sex trafficking. They've all pleaded not guilty and deny the allegations. Suska spoke to ABC News very openly about this. Let's take a listen to some of what she said.
First, I told him to calm down, calm down. He didn't. He started to strip my top off. I said stop, and I started angrily yelling louder. The more I said stop, the more he got violent with me.
This is bad. This is as bad as it gets. Now, she did make a police report in 2023. She is not involved in any of the civil suits brought against these guys, nor is she listed as a victim on any criminal case because, remember, I told you the date, 2014, the statute of limitations has expired. So no criminal case involvement, no civil case or money being sought. Remember, civil is always money. But we're wondering, could her story, could her allegations of rape against Oren Alexander still come into the criminal case, even though she's not listed as a victim on the indictment? Let's talk about it. I want to bring back in former prosecutor Melba Pearson. She's also the director of prosecution projects at Florida International University, and want to welcome into the conversation entertainment reporter Kinsey Schofield. Great to have you both on this. I know you both have been following this case since we learned the news of these brothers being charged. Melba, to you and the legal question, please, of might these prosecutors try to incorporate what this woman is alleging into the instant case?
Yeah, absolutely. If I was the prosecutor on this case, I would be trying to bring her in as part of prior bad acts. So there's an exception to the hearsay rule, meaning that out of court statements can't come in. But if you're trying to show motive or common plan or scheme, basically modus operandi, like this is a pattern, this wasn't a one-off accident, whatever the case may be, that could be a way that her testimony could get into the trial. It kind of helps in some ways shore up the prosecution, especially if any of the other survivors may have, fumbled on their testimony, something like that. Because remember, this is something incredibly traumatic to survive a sexual assault. So, when you have to talk about the worst day of your life potentially in front of a courtroom full of strangers, the pressure's on, and that can be difficult. So I think kind of having her and other survivors that may have not been able to meet the statute of limitations, have them come in and bring their testimony, I think would really strengthen the prosecutor's case.
Yeah, most definitely. Melba, thank you, for that explainer, and for anybody wondering, there is a way for this accuser to potentially get some justice if what she's saying is true. These guys have a very serious case being brought against him that's pending right now that you both know of. Kinsey, let me go to you, please. What is the talk in the true crime community about these brothers and about these allegations? And how does Maria Suska's allegations, how do they kind of fit into the overall narrative being alleged, please?
Absolutely. Julie, when we originally heard about this story, I think we predicted right here on this program that a lot of those stories that were circulating online would inevitably end up in the public space, and that there would be more accusers coming forward based on the chatter happening on Reddit, people talking about interacting with these gentlemen in the past. When it comes to this particular story, I'm so glad that you brought up that she did file a police report, because that is one of the things she's been criticized for online in the comment section of some of the publications that have talked about this. You know, why didn't she speak up? Well, the fact is she did. She did speak up at the time. And, you know, out of 1,000 sexual assaults, 995 perpetrators will walk free. Only 310 out of every 1,000 sexual assaults are even reported to police. That means 2 out of 3 go unreported, and testimonials like Maria's will inspire more women to speak out and defend themselves. And perhaps that was her ultimate objective here. Yes, I'm sure that she would like to see these particular brothers seek justice, but at the same time, I think she's speaking out for victims everywhere that felt silence or too afraid to speak out and defend themselves.
Really appreciate that point. Kinsey, thank you so much for that. Maria Suska told ABC News that she was shocked when she saw Oren Alexander on the news. Let's take a look at that moment.
I was shocked at first because I said, I remember him. This is the guy. This is my attacker. All this time I thought I'm the only one that this happened to.
Now, she told ABC News she's not interested in getting any money out of this. We know these guys have had multiple lawsuits brought against them. Important to note, she's not one of those people looking for money. So we're asking, what does she have to gain by reporting this, by sharing her story, which is something that is so horrible and so traumatic? What does she have to gain? Melba, your thoughts, please.
Well, I agree with Kinsey that this was an opportunity for her to be heard and for her to be able to tell her story and empower other survivors. And so I think that part was critical. And also that could be a huge part of her healing as a sexual assault survivor, just to be able to tell her story and be heard, and just, you know, people understanding like, hey, I'm coming forward. I'm not hiding my face or my name or anything like that. I'm not doing this for money. I don't have a stake in the criminal case per se, as in you're a listed victim in the criminal case. So I just think she wants to be heard, and she wants to empower others, and she just wants to tell her story so that, I guess in a way, that takes away any doubt in terms of the kind of people the Alexander brothers are.
Right. Yeah, you're so right, Melba. There's power in telling that story. You and Kinsey, you know this well. I mean, especially for trauma survivors, when you bring forward something, rape, a crime of violence, and most often a crime of secrecy, and when you bring it forward, you take that power away from your abuser. And so that could be the place that she's coming from. I know that she did tell ABC News that she's been in post-sex assault trauma therapy for quite some time, which is not hard to believe if what she's saying is true. Kinsey, your thoughts on what might she be getting out of this? What might this be doing for her if she's not getting any money and she's, got something, very traumatic that she's now sharing with the world?
Yeah, exactly. Imagine how hard it is to tell this to not just cameras, but knowing that your parents are going to see this or your family members are going to see this. You've got to be a very brave individual. But I also wonder if there's any sort of special feeling about being a part of this cultural shift that I feel like we're saying. There's this famous quote, there's one law for the rich and there's one for the rest of us. And it does feel like there's a shift when you look at people like Harvey Weinstein or Diddy behind bars. There's this new sense of confidence that perhaps we're inching closer to equality for all when it comes to justice. When you do see some of these huge personalities or rich individuals actually have to face consequences, and perhaps she realized, you know what, I want to be a part of this story.
Mm-hmm. Right. I like that you said that, Kinsey, because we know that Oren has denied the allegations. His attorney is saying this didn't happen, and the attorney brings up the fact that upon leaving the Versace mansion, she would walk out onto Ocean Drive, and there were a lot of cops in the area at the time, always are. And she questioned, well, why didn't she go ahead and report that, then and there? And maybe there's also a question of feeling powerless. If this was true and she's dealing with these guys that have so much money, so much influence, they're so connected. Like you said, with other defendants, we've seen that in other cases that we've covered together. So that's a great point to end this segment on. We're not done with the Alexander brothers. We're following them every step of the way. We're just going to have to hit a break. Kinsey and Melba, stand by, please. Still to come here on opening statements. Here's what we've got.
Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, was you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me. There was no reason to lie. Clearly, he was coming to me, wanted me to do something about it.
Could the Menendez brothers be released from jail? Our experts are weighing in. Plus, Linda Stermer's retrial set to begin as she maintains her innocence in her husband's 2007 murder. Have you heard about this case? Wait until you hear the facts. We're talking about what's going to tip the scales. Oh, the Menendez brothers sparking protests and press conferences. So what comes next for Lyle and Eric and the request to get out of prison? This morning, we're shining a spotlight on their future. These brothers have a motions hearing set for next month. So could the convicted siblings be any closer to freedom? Well, in an interview that my colleague Vinnie Politan did with the brand new LA County District Attorney Nathan Hackman, the DA said, whoa, not so fast. Take a look.
And when you ask, is there a pathway for the Menendezes, at least as far as the district attorney's office, to recommend resentencing, we actually set that pathway out. We identified 20 lies that they have told, and the primary lies is the first lie of self-defense. They said, in essence, that they shot their parents, shotgunned them to death with 12 different shotgun blasts, staged to look like a mafia hit, including a shotgun blast to the back of their father's head. They shotgun blasted their mother while she lay dying on the floor by reloading their shotgun and putting the gun up to her face and pulling the trigger. They then shotgunned each one of their kneecaps after they were dead to make it look like a mafia hit. What we said is that self-defense, that they said that they did it because they thought their parents was going to shoot them that night, and they did it preemptively, was a complete fabrication.
Yeah, lots of fabrications by these brothers, and DA Hackman has highlighted all of that for the public when he's been very transparent in talking about the reasons why they should stay behind bars. There is one last hope for the brothers with California Governor Gavin Newsom. So he can, of course, grant them clemency, and currently he's having his office conduct what's called a risk assessment to see just how dangerous these guys would be to the public if they're let out. Lots to talk about here. I'm so happy to bring back in Kinsey Schofield and Josh Ritter. Okay, so let's dig in a bit on what Governor Newsom can possibly do here. Josh, would you kick off our conversation? Do you think that the governor is going to take that big leap of faith and let these two killers out?
Well, he's certainly doing more than just talking about it. I mean, for the most part, he's been taking a hands-off approach and saying, listen, I'm going to allow the DA to weigh in on this. At first, it was George Gascon. Then he lost the election to Hackman. He said, I'm going to let Mr. Hackman have an opportunity to review all the materials and come to his own assessment of the case. But in spite of all of that, he's still taking steps toward what might be an eventual decision towards clemency, and that was in ordering this risk assessment. There's really no need to do that unless he's actually contemplating granting them some sort of clemency. And listen, from everything I've heard, those risk assessments it only evaluates their behavior since the time they've been in custody. And it looks like it will come back very favorable to them. I imagine they will have a low risk assessment point because it doesn't really evaluate the crime itself, only their behavior since the time that they've been in custody, which we know has been, for the most part, exemplary. So what is he going to do with that now that he has that evaluation saying they're at a very low risk? He's already been requested to grant them clemency, and he's already said he's going to entertain it. It might put him in a very difficult position of saying no. So who knows?
Right. Josh, appreciate all those thoughts. I have a clip for you both. This is where DA Nathan Hackman last spoke out to the public when he was talking about the resentencing law in California and how in order for it to be applicable to this case, these defendants have to take responsibility and own up to what they did. Let's watch.
With respect to them, the key issue of exhibiting insight, full insight into their crimes and completely accepting responsibility for their actions, this is where the Menendezes, like Sirhan, also fall short.
Yeah, you know, he was saying, you know, the whole defense is a lie, that it's a lie, that they were not shooting in self-defense of their parents and they just need to come clean. Yet, even without coming clean and owning it and all their lies, they still have this incredible amount of support from many family members. Kinsey, being in Los Angeles like Josh is, you know, you're talking with people, you're podcasting about these issues, you're hearing what the public is saying. What's the public sentiment like for these two? You know, I'm not talking about the family, but just people that aren't connected to Lal and Eric.
I think you deal with two different groups. You deal with the TikTok groups, the younger generation that is very one-sided when it comes to the boys. They fight fiercely for this, their defense, which is self-defense, and they go into all of the abuse allegations. And then you have people like myself, like perhaps you, that grew up and watched the trial in real time and really digested how horrific this incident was and this murder was, and they feel like these men are right where they belong, you know? So I think that you have two different groups there. One has more traction because obviously the algorithm is a little bit better. But I think that the DA is right when he says he just would simply feel more confident in their rehabilitation if they acknowledged some guilt on their part, which that we haven't seen. And if they continue to blame others, how do we know that they wouldn't be capable of breaking the law again? And Gavin Newsom's in a very difficult position because I also feel like a lot of this is theater. He inevitably wants to be president one day, which is what we saw with George Gascon. A lot of his work with the Menendez brothers was theater because he was in the middle of a fierce campaign. And if he wants to be president one day, you have to understand you're going to alienate a lot of people with a decision like this. This is tough.
Yes. Oh, Kinsey, I love that point. Thank you for bringing that up, you know, because we have to have that context, right? Who's the speaker here? What are his goals? What are his motivations? Gavin Newsom is talking about this case on his podcast, Official Business, involving an issue before him as part of his role serving his constituents, and he's podcasting about it. Let's look.
Does what the DA just said, does that influence the process that's being conducted by our board of parole hearings? It doesn't. It may influence the court. The court resentencing will continue to go forward. The DA now, the new DA, is pulling back, recommending from the Menendez brothers to be resentenced, but it doesn't impact the process that's underway, that review for clemency in my office or the independent risk assessment that will be concluded on June 13th by the Board of Parole Hearings.
All right, so he's talking about it on the podcast. Josh Ritter, you've been someone who served in LA County for a long, long time. Do you think that's appropriate that Gavin Newsom is using his personal podcast as a place for discussion for official state business?
It's so bizarre, and I hate to say this because I'm a California native, but it seems so California of him as well. I don't know why the governor needs a podcast and needs to be talking about these things on a podcast, but you know, interesting too, another thing to consider here is that Hackman, I think, was very clever. You played that clip earlier where he referenced Sirhan, and many may be thinking to themselves, what are we doing talking about Sirhan, a political assassination that took place decades before the Menendez brothers? Why is that important? We talked about, in that case, they were denied parole, or pardon me, Sirhan was denied parole because he hadn't shown a full acceptance of responsibility. Whose words were that in denying his parole? They were Gavin Newsom's. So they were pointing out that Gavin Newsom set the standard here. The standard is, if you haven't accepted full responsibility for your actions, then you really shouldn't be granted any sort of clemency or parole. And they're saying, if we're applying that standard here, Gavin Newsom, your own words and your own standard, then the Menendez brothers don't qualify and should not be granted either resentencing or clemency.
Wow. Josh, didn't know that connection. Thank you for sharing that with us. That is awesome to know and remember. We've got to have you and Kinsey back again soon to talk about this case. Thank you both for waking up so early for us on Opening Statements. Our Courties love you. And remember, Kinsey and Josh both have their own YouTube shows. Kinsey's is Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, and Josh's is Courtroom Confidential. Thank you both so much. We'll see you soon. And coming up next here on Opening Statements, we're talking about defendant Linda Stermer. Have you heard about this lady's case? She was convicted of killing her husband back in 2010. Her conviction was then later overturned because she was deprived a fair trial. So she's got a retrial coming up. But wait, just wait until you hear the facts. And before we go to break, come to your television set. From internet fame to repeat offender, police say the University of Georgia student who recently went viral for her pretty mugshot got arrested again. According to police, Lily Stewart was taken into custody and charged with obstruction of a law enforcement officer over the weekend. She was previously arrested for speeding 2 weeks ago. Stewart's since been released. She's out on bond and calls the mugshots bad photos of her. All right. We'll be right back after this.
You got 9 months of testimony, right? 4.5 hours, you come back and say, we got a verdict.
Not guilty of the crime of murder.
They're going to blame all this on you. In this case, the jury was sequestered for 9 months.
Oh, God.
These people were too beat down to even try to fight for their own conviction.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? A Court TV original series. Season finale Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
Now, for what's tipping the scales, jury selection begins today in our newest case here on Court TV. Linda Stermer was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 2010 for murdering her husband, Todd. Her conviction was then overturned 8 years later because of ineffective assistance of counsel. Now she's set to face a jury again, but the facts of her husband's murder are shocking, to say the least. Court TV's Ted Rowlands reports.
Our mother murdered our father. She drugged him, and she set the house on fire, doused him in gasoline. Then after the fact, when he managed to get out of the house, she ran him over with her van.
That's Todd Stermer's sons talking to 48 Hours about the January 2007 murder of their father, allegedly at the hands of their mother, Linda. Documents obtained by Court TV lay out the prosecution theory of what happened. Linda was having an affair and Todd wanted a divorce. She spent the morning of the murder buying gas in cans and then sent the kids to the mall. She drugged Todd, according to the state, hit him on the head with a blunt object, doused him with gasoline, and lit him on fire. When he survived that and escaped the home, Linda was there and ran him over with his van. Linda's carpool buddy, Kate Fox, testified that Linda had told her that she spent years thinking about ways to get rid of Todd.
Did you have anything to do with his death?
Nothing whatsoever.
Linda's story was that she was in the basement doing laundry when she heard Todd scream from the living room. She said the smoke was too thick to reach Todd. So she ran outside, got in his van to go seek help. That is when she says Todd came running out.
Did you know you had run over your husband?
No.
Linda says Todd wouldn't get in the van, and she lost sight of him in the chaos. But prosecutors say she wanted to make sure he was dead. And in 2010, a jury agreed. Linda was convicted and sentenced to life without parole. Then, in 2018, Linda's conviction was overturned on the grounds that she didn't get a fair trial. She was released on $10,000 bond.
This is Linda Stermer.
Now she has a new attorney who is questioning whether the fire was even deliberately set and whether Todd's death ever should have been ruled a homicide.
Oh my goodness, Ted Rowland's reporting there. Can you imagine? Todd Stermer on fire, runs outside of his house, and then he's hit by this van? This is unbelievable. So what's going to tip the scales in this retrial for his wife, Linda? I want to bring in our legal eagles now. Still with me, Melba Pearson and Randolph Rice. Randolph, let me begin with you, please. What do you think when you hear these facts and that she's got another bite at the apple?
Yeah, these are just crazy facts. I mean, this theory that she's in the basement doing laundry makes absolutely no sense. It's evident that, he's got these contusions on his head, that he's ultimately set on fire. The experts are going to come back in this thing, and it's going to be just knowing what happened the first time around. It's like getting to do it all over again and saying, hey, you know what? We made this one little, not mistake, but let's even make it better the second time around. I think it's just going to be a slam dunk for the prosecution.
I'm with you, Randolph. Melba, what do you think here? A good case for the state?
I think so. Generally, retrials favor the prosecution because they can see, read the transcript and see where they needed to kind of tighten up their case, where they could have brought in other witnesses that may have been on the witness list disclosed to the defense, but they're like, for expeditious purposes, expediting the case, but we're not going to call these people, right? Now, this time around, they may decide to call additional witnesses, again, to strengthen the case. And I think that this is a classic case of overkill because you beat the man, you set him on fire, and you run him over because you're having an affair. Ma'am, please.
Melba, preach, love that. That should be the state's theme. Shouldn't it be, Randolph? Overkill.
Yeah, no, I think Melba's right. I love that. I mean, the prosecutors, nothing worse than a case when I was a prosecutor when something came back and you felt like, okay, I got to do this again. You take it almost personally. You think, okay, now I'm really going to make sure that I get a conviction here. So I certainly think that the prosecutor is going to be fired up about this. And I think, like Melba said, bring it on. Let's go.
Yes, Randolph, you saying that just, it brought back those feelings. It brought back all the feels for me because trust me, I know, especially when it's something that's not your fault. Here it was her attorney's fault, apparently, based on what the court found that counsel was ineffective. And so you're right. It's like, oh, if she thought they were coming for her in round one, round two's going to be far worse. Melba, tell me, do you remember those feelings, like that feeling of, defendant look out, right?
Yeah, I do. At moments I do miss that, but but the reality is you have to be about justice and about the right thing for the victim, for the victim's family. I mean, her poor sons had to, go through this trauma the first time and now have to sit through it again. But you've had, from the sounds of it, pretty much, 7 years to kind of work on getting your trial together and tightening up your facts. So I think that they're going to bring a much stronger case this time. But again, the ineffective assistance of counsel is a tough one because you can't be both the prosecutor and the defense. So, that's a situation where hopefully this defense attorney is going to bring his A game and, this case can go to a verdict and be done with once and for all.
Right. Perfect point to end on, Melba. Thank you for that. Exactly. Being a good prosecutor is about being a minister of justice, as you noted. So great having you both on the show. I need to let you both go. Be sure to check out Melba's show, Mondays with Melba on MTN. And Randolph Rice, thank you as well. We love having you both on Opening Statements, and we'll talk again soon. And my friends at home, if you like the show, watch it again. Go to courttv.com. Just click on the shows tab right there. Share it. We're here every weekday morning at 8 a.m.